Welcome back as we continue our conversation with Auditor General Kimi Makwetu. Now, Mr. Makwetu, you're saying as South Africa's supreme audit institution, this country looks up to us to act and project an image of accountability. The same way we hold the entire public sector to account on how it uses taxpayers' monies. What should government departments and other SOEs do now on the back of your decision?
If you look at our mandate, Vuyo, we are the primary statutory auditor of the public sector. And the risk assessment that we have made is largely in response to issues pertaining to an audit when we execute an audit. As I said earlier on, we allocate work to all of these firms to do it on our behalf. So they almost act for us in an agency type of relationship. The decisions that SOEs may want to do on other services must respond to their own policies as they look at their own risk management as operational entities.
But you're saying you are the, as you call it, supreme audit institution. Why aren't you agitating, why aren't you saying to government departments, SOEs, look, and other agencies, look guys, this is the decision we've taken and we urging you to do the same? What's wrong with that?
Yeah, but they don't allocate statutory audit work, we do. And so we've withdrawn that, so there will be no audit work of that kind that it gets done. If they decide that they want to engage them as dancers, for example, we can't stand in their way for as long as they know they can dance. So the point I'm trying to make here is that as a supreme audit institution, we are dealing with the risks associated with the execution of an audit. If there's another service that they have assessed them to be adequately positioned to carry out for them, they must follow their policies. We are not going to prescribe to departments to cut ties for everything. That's not our job.
But I mean, the core, we all know what the core work of your KPMGs and your Nkonkis are. It is auditing.
This is the point I'm making. We've got two streams of audit, right? The one set of audits is what we ought to have done ourselves, but we do not have the people to do it. The other stream of audit is what we call in our section, in our Public Audit Act, Section 4.3 of the Public Audit Act, where we are allowed to get the likes of TBSA to decide that they are going to appoint a private audit firm to do their books. But we must concur. We've also withdrawn that concurrence as far as statutory audits are concerned. So it's not just the work that we give out. It's also the concurrence for the work that is done when they are appointed directly.
So it goes without saying?
Absolutely.
That those entities will now withdraw their contracts or services? Because
we have withdrawn our concurrence to their principal decision.
What is this saying about the profession, the auditing profession in the country?
Well, Vuyo, you can imagine that the audit profession, if you look back, not long ago, 1999, 2000, and you look at the Master Bond report, there are many banks there that were mushrooming in South Africa. The likes of Alphen Bank, the New Republic Bank, the likes of MacMed, who were in the healthcare sector, the likes of Page Group, Dobile, in the infrastructure engineering sector, and many other firms. If you go through that report, the answer is we've been here before. And matters of weaknesses in executing audits were highlighted in that report very clearly, some of which were people express opinions that are going to satisfy the interests of management, which were about people don't do enough work to come to the right conclusions. They are all there on record in the Master Bond report, which was done by Judge Nell and released in 2001. So there's a lot of evidence that the accounting and auditing profession never stood up for itself to fix the fundamental weaknesses that have been identified these 2 decades ago.
If they didn't,
and they are resurfacing now. I think that's what you are seeing.
Now, if they didn't, and then who was then supposed to read them the Riot Act? Who was supposed to put a stop?
There's a regulator in the name of the Independent Regulatory Board of Auditors.
Is ERBA up to it?
Well, they are designed to do what is necessary to act on it, and
but
I'm sure
they?
All of us have seen that they battle to finish investigations quickly. I don't know what it is, they must speak for themselves, but our view is that they have struggled to complete investigations quickly.
But what's your analysis?
My analysis is that people are roaming around even though they were found to have done wrong as accountants. Nobody does anything to them.
But if the regulator is ineffective or inefficient, then who has the power to then make sure that the rot stops? Because it has to stop.
The regulator must be made to do their work.
But if they are not doing it?
If they are not doing it, then they must find other ways to make that institution do its work.
But I mean, when you found shortcomings, for example, in what you have to do, where you found that there were no consequences, you went to Parliament and asked for more power, which you're now being given. What should Parliament or the regulatory board be doing?
The Independent Regulatory Board of Auditors reports to the Committee on Finance in Parliament. Part of the mandate of that committee is to oversee the activities of the Independent Regulatory Board of Auditors, among others. And that's where that conversation needs to happen. If that committee in Parliament on Finance is of the view that IRBA has not done sufficiently enough work to mete out consequences, they've got to act on it. In the same way that we as an audit institution, when we go to the Standing Committee on the Auditor General, and we found to have slipped up in a number of areas, they are required to act on us. And I think that's the line of thinking that needs to be deepened around this issue, because in the absence of those consequences, you will find people who come to your show here and commit and agree to all sorts of misdemeanors that they were part of, but they continue to be registered as chartered accountants and continue to practice as auditors in situations where they were supposed to have been stopped.
Well, not everyone who is in the public sector is actually doing what they're supposed to do, right? And secondly, I mean, we have a history. Our politicians haven't really been the best of politicians. They have actually been found wanting in so many respects, and ever so often. We are where we are, where we're talking about state capture and all of that stuff, because they refused, not only failed, but often actively refuse to actually do what they are constitutionally mandated to do. Now, the question is, doesn't that put a responsibility on people like you to say we have to stand up even where we may not be invited, or constitutionally someone may argue that this is not your place? You actually have a job to stand up and say, we've got to do something about this and we have to do it now.
Well, unless you want to say you must sit down now, because I think we've stood up. But we are going to be reluctant to extend ourselves beyond areas that are within our mandate. Within our mandate, we are standing up, and we continue to, including today. So the question is, when are others going to stand up? Because if the levels of rigor and the standards that have been set are not observed, and people get away with it, then you are introducing impunity into the system, and people are going to get away with it. And all that's going to happen now, the reward for virtue is going to be robbery. People are going to get paid for not having done what they ought to have done. They're going to be rewarded and be given bonuses and all sorts of things, because nobody has held them to account in respect of the set standards.
Very briefly, on Wednesday you're addressing SAICA. What is the one thing that you're going to tell them?
The auditors and the accountants in this country must stand up and look themselves in the mirror and decide whether they really want to continue doing this for the future of the country, as well as to restore credibility in this country.
Mr. Makwetu, thanks very much for coming through this evening. He is the Auditor General.